Rick, given your expertise, I want to see if you can help with the situation that I know a lot of nonprofits are dealing with right now. You've got a situation where we're halfway through the year. They may be 50% to goal from what is a multi-million dollar development campaign. And now, for a whole host of reasons, their development team key members have left, right? Maybe for personal reasons, maybe for other opportunities, maybe because the world in which we live in is a little topsy-turvy and they're freaking out. What could they have prepared for if, for people leaving halfway through a campaign?
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate the question. I think what we're talking about here is things will happen. Let's just name that. People leave, as you say, for different reasons and so on. I think what we always need to be doing is preparing for a time where we might have a skeleton crew or we might have nobody. There should be still some momentum with the program, enough so that we can be able to say, hey, it's going to be uncomfortable for a little while because we have fewer people here, but the bottom shouldn't be falling out of the whole program. And so I would say the reason or the ways that we can sort of mitigate that is to go back and say, what types of systems do we have in place? What types of cultivation and stewardship is happening on a systematic and regular basis? So if there is a bump in the road along the way, we are able to move through that. And by the way, it shouldn't be a huge bump if you are doing that proper preparatory work. And I'm talking about using your database well, using your marketing well, like any systems that you have for pushing out newsletters or LinkedIn posts or whatever. There should be enough there that it should feel like you have a certain cadence going on, which then relates to the fundraising, the dollars coming in to say, people didn't even notice that you had a fallout in your personnel or that there were things happening because the systems were so in place and so regular that they didn't even notice that. I think that happens sometimes when you hear about a CEO leaves and sometimes people go, oh, I didn't know the CEO left, because the place is still running like a top. It's still running great. So I would say, to me, it's a lot of preparatory work, which quite frankly, Dave, can take years to get it right, so that if things happen as you described, end of year, end of fiscal year, we're not, the whole system's not falling apart.
It sounds like you're talking more about systems than people, right? If you have systems in place, one or two key people can move and things can still at least operate at some level until you replace that key individual. Do I get that right?
Yes, absolutely. And I would say that this sounds like I'm going a little bit off the mark here, but when you're talking about a campaign, I've seen systems work so well that even after the campaign ends and the institution has met its financial goal, they're still taking in money. People are still coming in and making contributions. Why? Because the momentum is so strong. The messaging was so strong. It's almost like this trailing effect of money coming in even after the institution, quote unquote, doesn't need it anymore because it's met its goal. To me, that's incredibly good momentum and incredibly good systems that got you there.
Okay, Rick, hindsight's 2020. They should have done that. Systems aren't in place. What are the kind of things that the organizations can do now to try to continue the momentum as best they can on this capital campaign goal for the year?
I would say that you try as an institution to be honest with your constituency, and you just say, hey, listen, we have a shortfall here. Here's why. Just be really transparent. We have a shortfall. This is what's happening. And say, we'd like to bridge the gap. We need your help. We're in a bit of a pinch. And you have our pledge, you have our promise that we will be working on these things systematically through the rest of the year in this way. Like, basically, this is our strategic plan, or this is what we're going to be doing, to give them confidence that this is truly just a blip on the screen. But people tend, when asked, to step up. And so now, I would never position that in the same way every year. Like, for example, if the institution said, oh, here comes June, we've got the same problems over and over again. We still have a personnel who's left, or maybe our board is dysfunctional in some way, or something's happening, then the donors will say, okay, I'm not sure if I want to back this horse anymore. I love their mission, I love what they're doing, but it seems like from a system standpoint, they just can't get their act together, and I'm not sure if I want to throw good money after bad. So I'm out. But if you said it once, and said, hey, we could use your help to bridge the gap here, we're in this pinch, and you make a compelling statement, people tend to want to step up and be helpful. But again, it has to be very clearly done so that this feels like a one-off and not something that's, this is our annual desperate appeal.
Fair. That sort of leads to the next question then, is you sort of gave them what they can do on the stopgap measure, but what are the kind of things then they should start preparing for fiscal year 2025, 2026? What's the next year's game plan look like so they don't find themselves in the same predicament now, a year from now?
Yeah, so I'll just do a mental list of the things that I generally talk to nonprofits about as it relates to fundraising. I'll start at the top. The most important thing, in my opinion, is what's called a case statement or a case for support. It's basically the North Star. It's the narrative that's used for all things moving forward. It talks about your mission, your vision, your values. It talks about where you were in the past to get you to where you are today as an institution. It talks about where you are today as an institution. And then it talks about, most importantly, where you're going. What are the challenges ahead? What are the solutions that you're offering? What are the dollars and the key areas of investment? And how can I actually do those investments? How can I help you? I spend a lot of time with nonprofits on that. Whether or not they're going into a campaign, I believe that to be a very solid way to ground yourself as a sort of your flagship document. I also spend time on databases. I mentioned that a little bit earlier. Just a lot of people I've met, they either have no database at all, or they have a database and it's quite dysfunctional and not optimized. So bringing in an outside professional, and again, as I'm saying all this, it can be that you have this talent in-house and sometimes you need to hire out for it. And the expectation always is that if you're hiring out for it, it's worth it. It'll have a strong return on investment. There will be some good, you'll capitalize on that. So case statement I mentioned, database, cleaning that up, getting rid of bad data, making sure the data is solid. You're sending the right messages to the right people. In the database, there are people that have not donated. We call that cultivation, and people who have donated, and that's called stewardship. Also, spending a little time deciding what your cultivation and stewardship touches are. Your cultivation touches could be, we have like an awareness event, or we have, again, an email or a newsletter or a LinkedIn post, or we visit with people, or what have you. Stewardship can look very similar, but maybe stewardship, you bring them a little closer. Maybe there's a little extra access, and you get to meet with staff, you get to meet with leadership, and so on. But you bring them in nice and close. Those are really important. Also, related to giving, I think a huge gap for a lot of nonprofits is not asking for non-cash donations. And what I mean by that is real estate, closely held stock, privately or publicly traded securities, life insurance, tangible personal property, and so on. I'm not asking the nonprofit to process that internally. They can use outside help to do that, but I'm asking them to put it out there because 90 to 95% of people's assets are in non-cash positions. So going back to what I said before, you have a strong case statement, you combine that with good marketing touches like cultivation and stewardship, and you talk about non-cash assets and ways they can help. Those are all real big game changers. And that's very, very deliberate. Everything I'm talking about is a very deliberate approach, month to month. You're just doing these things. You're taking time aside to invest in the institution and invest in these systems, invest in these ways to make sure that people know that you're serious and you've really thought about this. And I think that just creates a different trajectory and a different momentum. I mean, there are many more things I could talk about, but I think those are really foundational, what I just mentioned.
Solid stuff, Rick. Give us a little background on you and when organizations should call you and bring you in.
Thank you. My background is I was a financial advisor for 7 years. I worked with people in retirement planning, education planning, life insurance planning, and so on. I did that. That was fun. I enjoyed it. I got a lot out of it. And then I saw an opportunity about 20 years ago to join Dartmouth College as an associate director of gift planning, which meant I was talking to people about bequest intentions and charitable gift annuities. And so it was related to my field. I had some transferable skills, but I hadn't actually gone into the field of charitable giving nor estate planning type stuff. So I worked at Dartmouth for a while. I became a director of gift planning for the medical school at Dartmouth at one point. I also became director of gift planning at the same time for Dartmouth Hitchcock Medical Center, which is a medical a medical facility in New Hampshire, right down the road from Dartmouth Medical School. And so I worked on that, and then I started to move into major gifts, which were $50,000 or more outright gifts. Then I moved into principal giving, which was $1 million or more outright gifts. And I held on to the plan giving, that future-based giving, the whole time. So I was juggling a lot of balls. Then in 2017, I started to move into the New Hampshire Charitable Foundation, which is a statewide community foundation, and I was VP for Development and Philanthropy Services there. And then I did that for 6 years, working with donors who were interested in academia, healthcare, and lots of other things, working with professional advisors like CPAs, wealth advisors, trust and estates attorneys, and also doing a lot of complex asset stuff. But then 2 years ago, I opened up my own doors and hung a shingle out and said, I'll work with nonprofits who are trying to raise money. I'll work with donors who are trying to give away money. And I'll work with professional advisors who are trying to have the philanthropic conversation with their clients, whether they be CPAs, wealth advisors, or trust and estates attorneys. So far, so good. 2 years in, I feel like I'm doing a lot of really strong work with nonprofits, really substantive work, which I hoped to do. And then I'm starting to really dive into the donor work as well and the professional advisor work, which is very rewarding. So I'm not bored. It's really stimulating stuff, and I do feel like I'm making a difference.
I know you're making a difference, and congratulations on 2 years. Rick, thanks for the time. I really do appreciate it.
Thank you, Dave. It was a pleasure.